remember my question since you brought this up. So there are lots of pathologies, diseases, and so forth, which look genetic, and yet when you go looking for the gene for them, you either can't find the gene or you find a bunch of genes and you can't figure out what's what. So, I mean, there are a whole slew of these things. Mental illnesses of various sorts appear to kind of vaguely run in families, but you can't really identify a gene for schizophrenia. Obesity appears to kind of run in families, and yet there's no clear gene for it. Could these be, I mean, could you be, quote, inheriting these characteristics by inheriting the microbiome? Is that
well, for sure? You inherit your microbiome and your virome from your mother at birth. You acquire it by drinking amniotic fluid in utero, and then after you are born, it is shaped by your environment, the individuals you contact, the food you eat, pets in your house, and so forth. And by age 2 or 3 years old, it's stabilized. And so you're essentially inheriting that from your surroundings.
So this is a whole other form of inheritance besides just simple genetic.
It's largely ignored. So today, you know, there's a great jump to sequence everybody's genome and figure out exactly what's wrong with them and how to treat them. But we're ignoring the microbiome
of the
and the virome. Yes, absolutely, because they are playing into it, just as you have suggested. And they may be modulating a certain gene in a way that we don't understand otherwise.
So this is why I call it the dark matter of biology, because it's as if 90% of the genome is not really our genome exactly.
I think it's a good word. I like it.
There you go. All right. I'll take virome, you take that. We're trading things here. This is very good. Is it possible to predict the effects of a virus by looking at its genome? Can you look at the RNA sequence here of this little virus and say, well, I bet this is going to do this or that once it gets into a cell?
No, absolutely not. So if you gave me the polio sequence, I would immediately recognize it as polio, and I could say, I know what this virus will do when it infects a person. But if you give me a brand new virus you've isolated from nature and the genome is similar to polio, I can't predict what it's going to do. No, and that's a shortcoming of all genome sequences. You don't know what their effects are going to be.
Right, right. But I would have thought one as simple as this, you might have some, but not so.
No,
it's still not simple enough.
It's not simple enough because we don't have enough information on what particular genes and proteins do yet. It's still very early days. You know, genome sequencing isn't that old.
Right, but I mean, you know the whole sequence of this. You know all the genes in that. Do we know what all the genes in the polio virus do?
We do. And you could give me a virus with all the same genes but with slightly different sequences, and I would not be able to tell you what it did because one amino acid change could make a huge difference in what a virus does. So the answer is no, and it will be some time before we're able to do that. Now, I spoke recently with Carl Zimmer, who's going to be part of this series this week, and he was lamenting getting so many genome sequences, and he argued it's meaningless to do this. And now it's not meaningless because you need the information to start doing the experiments that you're talking about.
Right?
But viruses, bacteria, animal genomes, we need the information to go forward for sure.
So these guys evolved? Do they go extinct?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Viruses have, for sure, just like I think 99% of all species on Earth have become extinct, just in the same way viruses and bacteria have as well. Unfortunately, with viruses, we don't have any record of that. You know, the genomes decay after a few hundred years, and we can't get any record of, we can only infer what they were from the current day appearances of a virus, and that may not be very accurate. But for sure, they have come and gone. I always like to tell my students, every virus has to have at least one gene to antagonize your immune response. Otherwise, it loses. And there have probably been many viruses without such genes that have come and gone and simply been eliminated by very efficient mammalian immune systems.
Well, that's a problem for a virus, I guess. Yes, that's right. So, all right, so that leads me to another set of questions, I suppose, which is what's the relationship between viruses and our immune system? I mean, is there sort of a chicken and the egg thing here? I mean, viruses clearly came first. So is our immune system largely a response to viruses?
I would say